Title: The Day They Believed Him at Jefferson Academy, an elite private school nestled in one of Washington, D.C.'s wealthiest neighborhoods. Two assumptions had gone unchecked for far too long. First, that a black child who claimed his father worked at the Pentagon must be exaggerating. And second, that a prestigious school was immune from national threats. Both illusions shattered the day Elijah Brooks brought his father to school. Elijah was 10 years old, sharp for his age, with a quiet demeanor and eyes that missed little. He didn't fit neatly into the world of silver spoon students and generational wealth. He wore the same polished uniform, but he knew the difference. His classmates arrived in Teslas and Maseratis, while his father dropped him off in a modest, dust-speckled sedan that on the morning of Parents' Day, Elijah adjusted his tie and looked in the mirror. He was proud, because today they would finally see the truth. His classmates, his teacher Miss Kavanaugh, everyone who mocked him for pretending his father worked at the Pentagon would meet Commander Joseph Brooks. Downstairs, his father was already reading something classified on a tablet, dressed in casual clothes but carrying the same straight-backed alertness that came from years of military service. "You ready for today?" Joseph asked, sliding him a plate of eggs. Elijah nodded. "They're making us present about our parents. I'm going to talk about you." Joseph glanced up. "Remember what I told you. Some truths are better left unsaid." "I know, Dad," Elijah said, smiling. "Don't overshare." At school, Elijah stood out not because he tried to, but because he couldn't blend in. His best friend, Owen, was one of the few kids who didn't care about class or race. The rest? They'd already decided Elijah was just a charity case. Miss Kavanaugh, elegant and composed in her mid-40s, stood at the front of the classroom with a voice as polished as her pearls. "Let's begin," she said. "Alphabetical order. Elijah Brooks, you're first." He stood slowly, trying to ignore the murmurs. "My name is Elijah Brooks. My dad works at the Pentagon." The laughter came instantly. Tyler Whitmore, son of a defense contractor, snorted, "Pentagon janitor." The class erupted. Miss Kavanaugh didn't stop them. "Really, Elijah?" she asked, smiling sweetly. "And what does he do there?" "He works in defense intelligence." "I'm sure he does," she said, her tone steeped in mockery. "Next time, just be honest." Elijah sat down, humiliated, his ears burning. Owen raised his hand in defense. "I've seen his dad's badge." "Enough," Miss Kavanaugh snapped. "Let's move on." When Elijah got home, Joseph noticed his silence immediately. "Talk to me. I told them you work at the Pentagon." They laughed. "Even my teacher. She said I was lying." Joseph's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "We'll talk later. I have to take a call." That night, Elijah couldn't sleep. He looked out the window and saw a black SUV idling across the street. A man stepped out, whispered into a wrist mic, scanned the neighborhood, and got back in. "Dad," Elijah said, knocking on his father's study door. "Someone's watching us." Joseph peered through the blinds, unshaken. "Don't worry. Go back to bed." The next morning, Joseph left early. Elijah found a note on the kitchen counter. "Had to leave early. Mrs. Evans will take you to school." Dad, back at Jefferson, Miss Kavanaugh's disdain hadn't softened. When Elijah tried to speak about the Pentagon again, she rolled her eyes. "Let's stick to reality, shall we?" But at the Pentagon, Joseph was reviewing something far more serious, a cyber attack attempt on Jefferson Academy's student database. "Get me visual confirmation," he barked. Now, back at school, Elijah noticed a woman in a trench coat photographing the building. Not a parent, not a teacher. She vanished within seconds. That afternoon, Joseph picked him up in silence, studying the boy's tablet. "What's this?" he asked, noting strange encrypted messages flashing and vanishing. "I don't know," Elijah replied as Joseph's expression darkened. "Let me see that." He ran diagnostics late into the night. "Nothing obvious," he finally said. "But listen to me. If anything strange happens, you call me." Immediately. The next day, Miss Kavanaugh took another shot. "Elijah, since your father works at the Pentagon, why don't you enlighten us about it?" Elijah did. He spoke of the Pentagon's overbuilt bathrooms, a relic from segregation. He told them about the Cold War hot dog stand that Soviet satellites mistook for a nuclear site. Silence followed, not mockery. Miss Kavanaugh dismissed him with thin lips and tighter posture. That'll be enough. Later, she confronted him privately. Parents' Day is next Friday. Perhaps your father would like to visit? Prove his story. Elijah squared his shoulders. He'll be there. At home, Joseph listened carefully to his son's account. She challenged me, Elijah said. She thinks you won't show. Joseph nodded. I'll be there. But he wasn't coming just to prove a point that he was coming because the breach Elijah had unknowingly triggered was real. The encrypted ping on his son's tablet? A backdoor into secure networks. Someone had piggybacked through Jefferson Academy, targeting students whose parents worked in national defense. Elijah was one of them. The day of Parents' Day arrived. Joseph Brooks walked into Jefferson Academy in a crisp navy suit and an ID badge that sent murmurs down the hallway. Miss Kavanaugh's smile evaporated the second she saw him. This is my father, Elijah said calmly. Joseph Brooks. Miss Kavanaugh's hand trembled as she shook his. Mr. Brooks, welcome. Pleasure, he replied. I understand you've had some questions about my son's accuracy. She stammered. He smiled politely. But even as Joseph mingled with other parents, he was receiving updates through a discreet earpiece. Threat confirmed. Multiple attempts to access school servers. Surveillance devices found. Suspicious package near boiler room that he moved quickly, slipping into the hallway as the school went into lockdown. Inside, Miss Kavanaugh's students huddled in fear. Joseph returned to the classroom. Everyone stay calm, he said. We're initiating a precautionary evacuation. By then, the FBI had arrived. The trenchcoat woman? Special Agent Ramirez. She'd been surveilling the school for weeks. Joseph swept Elijah into a protective embrace. You stay beside me. An attempted abduction was foiled at the hallway exit. A disguised janitor trying to grab Elijah amid the chaos. Hours later, the truth came tumbling out. Foreign operatives had targeted elite students for data and leverage. The plan was to plant surveillance, extract intel, and if necessary, kidnap. Elijah had been a high-priority target. Because of his father, Joseph and Ramirez led a raid on a Delaware warehouse where Elijah was being held. He was rescued in a daring confrontation with the operations mastermind, a man Joseph had once nearly killed on a covert mission overseas. The fallout was massive. Jefferson Academy underwent a sweeping transformation. Staff were retrained. Bias was confronted. Miss Kavanaugh issued a public apology. And Elijah? He went from being doubted to being celebrated. He didn't need to say, I told you so. His presence said enough. Weeks later, he presented a project titled Beyond Assumptions at the school showcase. In it, he said, assumptions aren't just mistakes. They're barriers. My father wore no medals to school, but he kept your children safe before you even knew they were in danger. In the back of the gym, Joseph watched quietly, pride in his eyes, and no one laughed at Elijah anymore, because now they believed him.